Hello everyone, welcome to this week's 3D design activity, brought to you by the Corona Public Library's Maker Exchange. My name is Mr. Martin, and today I'll be doing a quick walkthrough of CURA, the 3D slicing software you'll use to prepare your designs for printing. Open up your favorite browser and head to ultimaker.com. Once the website loads, you'll notice you have a selection up top. Go to Software and click the link that says Ultimaker CURA. You can check out what the software has to offer, but for now we're just going to hit download. You can see there's several operating systems supported. Once you save the file, it'll be wherever your downloads go. I'm using Firefox, so mine are up here. When you first run the program, you'll be greeted by this welcome screen. Click Get Started, make sure to read the user agreement, and then once you click Agree, you'll be prompted with a list of bug fixes from previous versions. After that, you'll be shown a screen asking you to opt in to collect user data. It is anonymous, but you can click on the More Information link to opt out of that. Once you click Next, you'll be shown, okay, make a Ultimaker account if you so choose. For now, we're going to skip that. And finally, we get to the part you can't skip, adding a printer. Now here, you can select Custom Printer, or you can go through and try and find the brand of printer that you own. If you don't own a printer, don't worry about that. For now, we can just show you how to get set up using the custom settings. So scroll all the way up and click on Custom FFF Printer. From here, hit Next, and the next screen will be a variety of settings that you can edit and adjust depending on what your type of printer is. The important ones are obviously the build plate size, whether it's heated or not. You have your start and end G code, which is essentially the instructions that run before and after each print. And of course, your extruder, your nozzle size is very important. You don't want to be extruding too much material at one time. So you are able to change that. You're able to change the number of extruders. And the Z height here is also very important. That's just going to tell your printer essentially how high it has to build. For our purposes, we will go with a rectangular build plate shape, since that's the kind we use here in the Maker Exchange. We will click on Heated Bed, and we'll leave everything else alone. So once you click Next, ta-da, there is your virtual build space. Now, middle mouse button moves it around. Left mouse button selects things if they were loaded, and right mouse button moves the camera. And to make sure we've got our space correct, we can count out 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters on all sides, so we have the volume we need. What if you do get a printer after you look at this tutorial? Well, up here, you can click on the Custom FF Printer and bring a drop-down menu, or just go up top to where it says Settings and add a printer. Now, again, there are several default profiles loaded. The monoprice ones tend to be pretty popular, so let's go ahead and just select the monoprice select Mini V1. You could rename your printer if you'd like. And if you notice, the base plate here will change. I'm having trouble lifting this back up. There we go. Depending on the printer that you've chosen. And you can always adjust those settings to be custom if you'd like, but we notice we do have a heated bed. You can expand the window to get a better view of the start and end G codes. And you'll notice these are a little more extensive than the custom ones just because it's a preloaded profile. You can change your nozzle size here, which is very important. And then making sure that the correct heights are listed for the extruders. To finish off what we see on the screen, up top you have a couple options. Down here on the left, you have your camera angles that you can quickly snap to. But let's talk more about these options. Under Preview, if you had an object loaded, you'd be able to view each individual layer there. Monitor, with a printer connected, you'd be able to see things like temperature, printing speed, total time elapsed, things like that. So for now, let's click on this setting here where it says Generic PLA. Now, PLA is one of the more common plastics we'll use to 3D print. You can always change these settings here by choosing a different material. It's important to note that each individual material has select temperatures and settings that you need to print with, And typically that's indicated in the packaging for that material. Here we can go over to the right and adjust the extruder settings now, so you can change the infill if you'd like your material to be less or more dense. It also provides a bit of more structural rigidity as well. Now here you can manually change most of the settings. Most commonly you'd want to change the print speed. You can always set it to be a little faster or slower depending on what your printer is capable of. And for us here in the Maker Exchange, under material, we do usually have to change our build plate temperature. We usually bump that up to about 70, just to make sure that our print is actually sticking to the build plate. What ended up happening was our Maker Exchange was just a tad too cold, and our prints ended up coming off of the build plate halfway through. But with a bit of tinkering, we were able to fix that. Now that we understand what we're looking at, let's go ahead and insert a file. Now you do that by clicking on the file icon on the top left, but first let's go ahead and download one of the previous designs we made in one of the previous tutorials. So I'm going to print this desk organizer. You can click on the object here and click download. You'll notice a little preview window does come up. So let's go ahead and just download it. And you want to save it as an STL. That's one of the more common files used to 3D print. And generally you just want to make sure you're working with that kind of file. So once you download it, you'll find it wherever your downloads folder is on your browser. Sometimes it pops up on the bottom. For me here it's over on the right. And now I'm free to click on the file and click downloads. So let's click on our file and hit open. You'll notice that when we do, you get a preview of it here on the build plate. And for us, our object fit completely within there with no adjustments necessary because we created it using millimeter scale. Now over here on the left, you have some options. In case it didn't fit, you'd be able to scale it down. For example, here if I scale it up, you'll notice it'll give me a bit of an error texture, telling me that, hey, that's not going to print. You're going to have some errors. And another thing to look out for example, if I rotate this upside down, 3D printers print from the bottom up. So whenever you have hovering any part of material that's kind of floating in midair, it's going to lead to some troubles unless you print some supports for it as well. Now there are some other options you can play around with, but let's just make sure our object is well situated on our build plate and then go down here and hit slice. Now when we do that, the software will think and then give us an approximation of how much time it's going to take to print. You can see the settings that lead to this, and the cool part is it even tells you approximately how much material you'll need. So these are generally underestimates, so it will always be a little over. When we go to save our sliced file, you can save it as a G-code or STL, and then that's just going to ensure that it does save that material here in this preview as you see it. So before we move on, let's quickly go over the settings that we've chosen. Here we're on the default print speed. We did change the build and or the printing and build plate temperature. That's unique to our setting in the Maker Exchange. You can adjust the layer thickness by essentially choosing the quality or the print speed here, and those profiles will be loaded automatically. You can switch between recommended and custom settings. The adhesion, I would always recommend that. It creates a little a brim or almost like a skirt, just to make sure that your extruder is printing before it goes to actually print the object. It's kind of like an extra layer to make sure it sticks. And you can see that here in the preview mode. So now you'll notice it does give us a little pretend extruder there, but most importantly we have this brim around the outside, and that we can snap off or cut off later, and that just shows us how it's going to stick to the build plate. And so again, if you needed to adjust the settings, you could do that there. You can always go back to the prepare, and if you needed to change the printer settings, hit manage printers, go to machine settings, and here, for example, if your print messed up for whatever reason, this is typically one of the first places you want to look just to make sure your G-code isn't messed up, your extruder size is correct, other details like that. Again, we are dealing with pretty small dimensions here, so any error in any one of these calculations or measurements could lead to some pretty drastic oopsies later on. But that's the beauty of 3D printing. And finally, it's just about time to print our object. So in this preview mode, you'll notice that you have bars over here on the right and bottom. If you adjust these, you can view layer by layer how your object will print and what it will look like at any stage of the printing process. You can also play a little animation here, and this is just super cool. It shows you exactly how your object will print. And so if you have any errors, or if you expect to have any errors, you can play this animation and get a good idea of where things might go wrong or where things did go wrong. It's just a little extra detail that makes CURA so great. And you can speed this up or pause it if you needed to. And again, it does this for every layer, and that's part of the reason we slice this before we print, is the software itself wants to make sure that the printer knows what's happening every step of the way. We are ready to print, so we're going to head up to where it says monitor, and if we had a 3D printer connected here, this is where we would actually start the print. We'd see useful details such as build plate or nozzle temperatures. We'd see the printer actually start to ramp up, and you'd know how much time is remaining and how much time has elapsed. So if things go wrong, you have a good idea of where they went wrong. And that leads me into one of my final thoughts here. With 3D printing, there is a lot of trial and error. Even getting our own printer set up in the Maker Exchange, there was definitely a lot of trial and error. It's just part of the 3D design process. It's very valuable to be able to create something completely from scratch and to figure out and overcome all of the challenges associated with it. You could easily just download created prints from the internet and simply practice printing them, and that is a useful tool for practice, but it's definitely very rewarding to be able to create custom objects specified for your uses to fit your needs. And again, it's just a really rewarding process overall. Even if you do not have a 3D printer at home, you could always save these objects as an STL and bring them into the Maker Exchange for printing here at the library. So that is it, my friends. I know that the world of 3D printing can be a bit scary, but hopefully with all of these tutorials and lessons, you feel prepared to take it on and to begin creating your very own unique 3D designs. We look forward to seeing what you create, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.